been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a dope pod to listen to. Anyways, yeah, guys, welcome back. Apologies for the tardiness. Uh, Things have been interesting the past couple of weeks. See, what really happened was Madam Web was so bad that I needed time to recover. Yeah, that was an interesting movie. Thankfully, that was not the last movie that I've seen. Otherwise, I'd probably still be depressed. Just that was a joke, by the way. I'm fine. But no, guys. So the reason for the tardiness, though, why there was like a 2 week delay in podcast releasing, is because I actually had about four different episodes lined up and ready to go. But sometimes life be lifing, and because life was lifing hard, all four episodes I had planned fell through. Thankfully, we're back on track. So yeah, the new schedule for the episodes will be full episodes will be released on Mondays, with the shorties being released on Fridays. And as typical superhero homie Q fashion, we're gonna see how short those shorties can be. Only time will tell, I suppose. But yeah, so the next few episodes are thankfully very much lined up and in the chamber and good to go. As a matter of fact, one episode that me and the boys will be recording later on this week will be our review of Dune 2. We reviewed the Dune movie that came out back in 2021, and then we also did ourselves the favor of watching and reviewing the original 1980s David Lynch Dune movie. And what an experience that was. So, yes, we have seen the latest Dune, and that review will be out hopefully in a couple of days. So, yeah, just sit tight for that one. As far as the shorty episodes go, those are going to be a lot of fun for me, simply because there's a few different categories that they're going to be going in. So one of them is going to be as simple as going over some of the homie commandments on like a one by one basis, and just kind of giving more comic book and superhero movie comparisons for them. Another one would be fixing less than good movies. Don't get it twisted. Now, I'm still gonna be an asshole towards movies that I think are terrible. I'm not on this kick of being nice to shitty movies, but I do think that it will at least test my own creative abilities if I can come up with ways using these movies' own plots and premises, just thinking of ways that these things can be improved. So that's going to be a very interesting venture for me that I'm looking forward to as well. And then also, I'm just going to cover one shot comic books. One shot comic books, I feel, never really get the credit that they deserve. It's just because they, or at least for me anyway, I can't really speak for all the other comic book readers out there. But a one shot comic is basically something that it usually happens after a certain series or after a run. So, for example, let's say I'm just looking at the shelves right now. If you're reading uh, Road to No Man's Land, Batman, Cataclysm, for example, there will be like 5, 6, 7, 8 issues that are the main plot of Cataclysm, and then after that, you normally get like maybe 1 or 2 issues, sometimes written by different writers than who's writing the main book, and they'll just come in and do something that it's just kind of like a quick adventure of what that hero was doing. And one shots, man, when they're good, they can be really, really good. And there's some really excellent one shots out there. Just right off the top of my head, know I have lined up a really cool Thanos one. There's a really cool Thor. Obviously, there's always some Batman that I'm looking to do, and but there's a lot though. Um, so I think that'll be a lot of fun as well. So those are just some of the things coming down the pipeline again, and yeah. So as far as tonight's topic goes, I will be talking about villains that we need to see in movies. And just with the whole idea of Marvel and DC both moving in a supposedly different direction, time will tell. I feel like this is an appropriate time for us to remind them that, hey, you guys still have these characters in the tuck that you need to use and that we need to see. But before we get there, there are a couple of things I wanted to discuss, and some of these things here are just really quick fire topics that were just too. They're relative to right now, but they're too shallow of topics to be fully fleshed out. One of them is something that I've mostly spoken about maybe three times on this podcast since its existence, and that is like the state of the quote unquote superhero genre. And I'll be honest, I really hate that term superhero genre because it's not really a genre all on its own. Like it's a coating, it's just a paint of coat or a coat of paint, I should say. It's not really its own thing. So, I mean, like for example, you look at comic books and they don't really fit into any one genre, you know, like they don't like superheroes don't all have to be super powered. They don't all have to battle world ending things. Like superheroes, they're not tied to just action, adventure, fisticuffs. And I think that some people may have forgotten that or maybe weren't even ever aware of that. And it's interesting because, you look at some of the best superhero movies in existence, for me anyway, and a lot of them really don't fall into that traditional genre of what people would call superhero genre. For example, The Dark Knight, one of my favorite movies of all time, is actually more of a crime thriller than a fisticuffs. It's not about Batman beating the shit out of everybody. It's about figuring out a way to really settle the crime in Gotham and about anarchy, and it's about all these other things that really tie into like the bigger scope of like this whole trilogy that Nolan was telling. The whole point is though, it's not, I wouldn't call that like an action adventure movie. And I feel like that's what most people would call superhero movies. Or just, yeah, like for it to be a superhero movie, there has to be a good guy and a bad guy, and then actions, and then third act, big climactic fist fight and whatnot. That's not exactly true. Another example was a movie that recently turned 7 years old, and another one of my favorite movies, Logan. Uh, Logan was directed by James Mangold, another great director, and he has notoriously stated that he's not a fan of superhero movies. And he went out and made one of the best. He made Logan. And the thing about Logan is that it's more of a neo noir western than anything else. And James Mangold is very good at making western movies. I believe he made the remake of 310 to Yuma, and I thought that was excellent. So James Mangold, he's very well versed in telling stories. And at the end of the day, that's what these superhero movies are, and that's really all they're required to do is tell a good and compelling story. Sometimes with these stories, man, like the powers or the fantastical settings, they're just the backdrops, man. Like they're not the main event, which is why superhero homie rule number one: character integrity is always so important. But when you think about what really makes these superhero movies pop, man, it's about being true to that source material and understanding what that source material was trying to tell us. And that's why sometimes it can be frustrating when Hollywood just clearly and obviously misses the mark with some of these things. So to get to the whole point of this long ass cold open here about is the superhero genre dying? Are people getting tired of superhero movies? We've been asking that question, I feel, every year since like 2019, you know. And the answer for me is no, I don't think that the superhero genre is dying. I do think that there is amongst the casual fan base a lack of interest in superhero movies, but there's a reason for that. And I think the reason is simply because they've been bad. Superhero movies as a whole have been awful since Endgame. And don't get me wrong, We've had maybe one or two really good ones. No Way Home comes to mind. That was excellent to me. Across the Spider Verse, another excellent one. Guardians 3, another one. Another one. But beyond that, how many truly awesome superhero movies have there been? There haven't been that many. I don't think that Doctor Strange 2 was a bad movie at all, but when you look at the expectations for that, people were expecting something that was going to be as epic along the lines of No Way Home, and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness just could not live up to that. That the bar was too high for that movie. But it wasn't bad. The point is though, you look at damn near all of Marvel Phase 4, you look at again, damn near all of Phase 5, and it's just not been good. But I don't just want to pick on Marvel because DC has been sputtering the whole way through as well. You know, when we don't need to go and do this whole song and dance again, but obviously DC was never really able to get off the ground with the DCEU for various reasons that I've spoken about ad nauseum. But hopefully with James Gunn's DCU, things can turn around and be better. And hopefully with Kevin Feige having this renewed vigor to improve the MCU, hopefully things will get better there. But the point is, as it stands right now, as of this recording, no, man, things have been ugly. So the superhero genre isn't dying. People are not tired of superhero movies. They're tired of bad movies. It's really what it is. The reason why people seem to be fatigued of superhero movies is because they've all been awful. For fuck's sakes, like look at the last. I don't know if we look at the last 3 superhero movies that I've reviewed. The last 3 superhero movies that have come out. It's been Madam Web. It's been Aquaman 2, and it's been The Marvels. Enough fucking said. Like none of those movies did what the studios wanted them to do. They all tanked. They were all awful. No one wanted any of that. And so there is no question, really. It boggles my mind when these studios don't understand that it's not because people have a lack of interest in superhero movies. It's because people have a lack of interest in these god-awful, terrible movies, especially ones that have characters that people don't tend to care about. So you can't just roll out your D-list characters and expect people to turn out in droves to go and support your movie, especially when it's bad anyway. One more thing I wanted to speak on before we get to the main event here, to the main course, the main dish. And that is Superman Legacy is now just Superman. I'm not mad at that name change. I am a little befuddled by it. I'm confused at the name change. Personally, I think Superman Legacy is a much better name than just Superman. Adjectiveless Superman. Just it's just Superman. And I don't know, there's just, it doesn't really say anything for me. It just says, yeah, it's a Superman movie. Like, it doesn't tell me perhaps what the goals of this movie are. It doesn't tell me anything about this movie further than the fact that it's going to feature Superman, Superman Legacy, you can derive a few things just from that additional word, legacy. Like, this is where Superman begins to build his own legend. This is when people really begin to revere Superman as the being that he is. This is when he begins to really cut his teeth. Like, there's a few things you can kind of derive from that to understand what Superman Legacy was going to do. But just Superman, I don't know. It just sounds ordinary. And these superhero movies, if it's their first time having a movie, then yeah, just call it by its name. Just refer to it as what it is. Blue Beetle, that was another awful movie that came out last year. I want to put that out there too. 2023 was not good for superhero movies, man. We got like two and a half good ones, and that half being like the Ninja Turtle movie, which also wasn't really that good, by the way. But man, when I compared it to the rest of them that came out last year, yeah, it was a clear, distinct third place. But Jesus, like, good fucking grief. That was rough, man. We made it through it though. Ant Man and or Ant Man 3 Quantumania, yeah, that was trash. Oh man, I'm having like just Vietnam flashbacks of the awfulness that was last year. That was rough, guys, but we made it through. We did the damn thing. Anywho, what was I saying? Yes, Superman Legacy. Like, yeah, so if it's a new superhero property, then yeah, just call it by its name. There's no need for any kind of fancy subtitles or adjective to go before it. You don't need any of that. Just call it, Superman. Just like the first Superman movie that came out in '78 was called Superman. Batman that came out in '89 was just referred to as Batman. The first Spider-Man movie was just Spider-Man. There was no need for obviously any numbers or any kind of subtitle just because, or any kind of like additional wording just because it's the first one. But for Superman, who's had several movies, I don't know. I just feel like he needs something else. One more mini thing to talk about before we get to the main course here is on the topic of like superhero names, and this is just really a reason for me to just really just really give the good old hand job to this movie one more time because I fucking love it. But the Batman. I don't know if people really understand the brilliance of the name of that movie, but calling a movie The Batman was fucking brilliant, and it fit perfectly with that movie. Some of you may be wondering, Q, what the fuck are you going on about? What makes the Batman different from just calling it Batman? Well, that's a big difference. Batman is a person. Batman is a crime fighter who police and criminals alike are familiar with, and they kind of understand him. The Batman is a myth. The Batman is an urban legend. The Batman instills so much fear because you don't even know if this thing exists. You don't even know what it is. Whenever you look at the earlier days of Batman, whether it be in the comic books, whether it be in the video games, or whether it be in the movies, whenever he's referred to as the Bat or the Batman, what's going on? There's intense fear being had by those who are uttering his name, and there is shock and awe because holy shit, this thing is real. And because he works by that theatricality and deception, he does give off this allure that he is more than human. And those are the times when he is called the Batman. Oh no, it's the Bat. The Batman is here. And yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and look at your comic books, look at your movies, your video games, and I can tell you that when he's called the Batman, it is in a sense of fear and reverence. So that's why the Batman is a brilliant name and perfect for that movie, because that's exactly what he was doing in that movie. And it's not up until the end where he's looked upon as more than just this mystical fucking nightmare of a creature, and he's looked at as a savior for Gotham. Brilliant fucking movie. If you guys haven't watched it recently, go watch it again. All right. We are here to do things and talk about stuff. What did I say was the main event tonight? What the fuck am I here? That's right. Villains. Man, I love talking about villains, man. Did it a couple times last year or the year before last, but man, villains are, they're the lifeblood of these superhero movies. If superheroes are the heart, then villains are the blood. That's just kind of how it works. The way that these comic books and superhero movies go, if you have a strong hero, and I don't just mean strong in the sense of beat 'em up, I mean strong in the sense of they're well-rounded actual characters who you can understand, maybe even relate to or get behind. That's a character. But if you have a character that has all those traits and a strong motive, then you need a villain that can match it. And when the villain doesn't match, then it's super obvious and everyone knows what's going on. And it's just, it's just not that fun because the villain looks more like a one note obstacle for the hero to overcome versus another well rounded character with their own thoughts and motives and behaviors. So I've always been about the idea that villains are very fucking important. As a matter of fact, that's one of the homie commandments that will be discussed on one of the upcoming Shorty episodes. I use quotation marks around Shorty. We'll see how short those episodes go. So before we get into the list here, and now that I'm 21 minutes in almost, let me go ahead and give you guys the proper introduction. Homies, one and all, welcome back to another very special episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin. My voice did not crack. And thank you all for being here. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, hope all you cool cats are doing well. This list, I'll go ahead and tell you, is kind of me cheating a little bit here. What I have in front of me is about 8 different villains. And the whole idea here is that I wanted to use villains that we have not seen in a live action movie that we absolutely need to see. And the reason why this list was so tough, right, is because of the parameters I set for myself. I couldn't include the likes of Mr. Freeze. I couldn't include the likes of Doomsday. I couldn't include the likes of Taskmaster. I couldn't include a lot of really good characters who just really got shitted on. So I had to stick to characters that have not made a live action appearance at all. And I'm going to start off the list here by cheating and and stating a character that has made an appearance in a live action movie. But the reason I say he's cheating is because technically this character has appeared in a movie. And as a matter of fact, this character technically appeared in Deadpool 2. But I believe the character only has any kind of screen presence at all for just mere seconds in a deleted scene in Deadpool 2. I am talking about a character that I have ranted and raved about before in the past. And here I am again. Omega Red. Omega Red absolutely needs a live action presence. He is way too cool of a villain, way too awesome of a villain to not be included in a live action movie. Omega Red, I love saying his real name, Arkady Rosovich. I'm pretty sure it has more of a Russian twang to it than my American tongue can pronounce, but Arkady Rosovich was his real name. This character was created, I believe, he's actually probably he's the second newest character on this list that I have here, because he was created back in the early 90s by John Byrne and Jim Lee. And boy, they did an excellent job with this character. If you guys are not familiar with the likes of Omega Red, then please, by all means, give him a Google. He is a phenomenally drawn character. You can tell that Jim Lee really had a fun time drawing up the look of this guy because his look is just fucking sick. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's an amazing look that this character has. And John Byrne, a legendary writer, obviously, he really did a great job of just bringing this character to life and giving him so many tools to work with. So, Omega Red is a phenomenal villain. He is a mutant, or at least most people believe he is. His is an origin story that could probably use a bit of an update, but I think that what we have now is kind of cool, and I like the fact that it's a little more shrouded in mystery. So what I mean by that is, at least to my knowledge, and to my what I could find by trying to look up more about his actual exact origin, it's like it just seems like there was a retcon or a soft retcon, but not even, right? It was just more of a further explanation that kind of muddled the waters on his origin. So I'll just go ahead and break it down to you guys from what I know about Omega Red. And again, there's kind of 2 different tellings about this man's origin, but both of them still place him in Russia, in the Soviet Union. So yeah, he. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason as to why, but in both tellings that I could find, this man has always been a murderer, a fucking savage serial killer. And the interesting thing about this is that I like both of his origins, what they do with him here, and I kind of wish they could just combine the two and make it one flush origin. But with Omega Red, yeah, again, he was just this fucking savage serial killer, and it was Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, who finds and apprehends him. And what I really love about this is that Banshee, he does the right thing, and he turns uh, Arkady into the KGB. And the KGB are like, "Oh yes, thank you for apprehending this foul criminal for us. We'll put him away." But then discovering that, oh shit, he's got like some mutant abilities, namely being like a kind of a he's got a healing factor. It's not on par with Wolverine's, but he does have a healing factor, and everything else is pretty much on par with that of Wolverine. As a matter of fact, I would say, in terms of like his physical feats, besides the healing factor, I would say that Omega Red is probably more on par with Sabretooth. And Sabretooth is ever so faster, ever so stronger, ever so more uh, dexterous than Wolverine. Probably because of the whole adamantium thing. But anyways, uh, upon discovering that Omega Red is a man of extreme talents, they said that he would be a perfect candidate. That and his ruthlessness would make him a perfect candidate for the Soviet Union equivalent of the Super Soldier program. And I've said it before, and I will say it again here and now. When it comes to the Marvel Comics universe, all roads lead back to Steve Rogers. All roads lead back to Wolverine, which ultimately the Wolverine roads lead back to who? To Steve Rogers. So many comic book storylines all derive from everyone in the goddamn world trying to replicate the super soldier serum. The Weapon X or the Weapon Plus program that was started up, that was a Canadian attempt to do what? To remanufacture the super soldier program. So all roads just always seem to lead back to goddamn Steve Rogers and Dr. Abraham Erskine. Dr. Erskine did a hell of a job with that formula. The fact that it got destroyed and no one else could replicate that shit. That is impressive. People have tried. There's the Fury formula that Nick Fury takes to kind of keep himself more young and spry. It's not the Super Soldier Serum. Obviously, the Weapons Plus program did a lot of nasty shit, but I mean, you need fucking Wolverine, to really make it pop. So it's not on par with the Super Soldier program. You got Mr. Arkady Rosevich here, Omega Red, and I'm going to tell you guys more about how his transformation and their attempt to make him a super soldier. But there's just so many. There's the Black Widow program. They have their own little special formula or serum that they take to. I say little. It's pretty fucking amazing. They have their own serum that they take, and everything just comes down to like I don't want to say a watered down version, but yeah, I mean it's a lesser than version of the Super Soldier Serum, and I just think it's awesome that Marvel just kind of keeps that continuity going, where all things kind of lead back there, and it's one of those things where you hope it never dies, but you know, comic books are gonna comic book sometime, and then they're gonna trip over their own dick. Anyways, to continue on here, Omega Red here, they do experiment on him, and they give him these carbonadium tendrils that they install in this man, and they disperse from like the base of his wrist. So like where Spider-Man's web would come out from, that's where these carbonadium tendrils come from. Now carbonadium is an extremely strong metal, extremely dense, extremely durable. It is not on par with adamantium. Is I don't want to call it fool's adamantium, but that's probably an accurate description for it, you know. But it's one of those things where even if even if he wanted adamantium, or even if the KGB that experimented on Omega Red wanted adamantium, it's not a good idea for what they wanted to do, because adamantium would not be able to function like a tendril. It's way too hard of a material. We all know that with adamantium, once it solidifies, that's it. Like it's gonna take that shape, except for when it doesn't. But that's not important. With carbonadium, it is much more malleable than adamantium. So it's like this. Compared to adamantium, carbonadium is not nearly as strong. But if you compare it to anything else you find, yeah, it's pretty fucking invulnerable, you know. So it's an extremely tough material, but on top of that, he's got, like I said before, he's got the super strength, he's got the durability, he's got a quasi healing factor of sorts. But here's the problem, though. The carbonadium is killing him, and because his healing factor isn't nearly as good as Wolverine's, it it is killing him effectively, and it's killing him a lot faster than Wolverine's adamantium is killing him. And that kind of brings into the whole idea of his death spores, which is another one of his abilities. So he can use death spores, kind of disperse those, and those will fucking kill most people within a matter of seconds or minutes. It doesn't take long. Now, obviously, if you're like super powered, toughness, durability, healing factor, then you can withstand it a little bit more, but it's still gonna kick your ass. And on top of that, Omega Red uses the tendrils that he has to wrap around his foes, and he siphons their energy like a vampiric effect. And now he has to do that to restore his life essence. Basically, it restores his immune system because the carbonadium is breaking it down. And so every so often, he just has to do that to people. He has to find a victim that he can siphon their energy from. He can siphon their life force from, so he can restore his own vitality back. The cool red outfit that he wears isn't just a fashion statement. It is also made out of carbonadium, so it does provide him some defense. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? In another universe where X-Men Wolverine Origins was a good movie, in that universe, they probably had Omega Red in it. And the reason I say that is because so many people that Omega Red does not stand is in that movie. Obviously, Wolverine. There's John Wraith. That's the character that was played by Will.I.Am, the teleporter. Obviously, Sabretooth, Agent Zero. They were all in that movie, and they were all a part of Task Force X, or fuck, what the hell they called themselves? I forget. It was a name similar to that, though. Or was it? No, not Task Force X, because that's the fucking Suicide Squad. I'm getting my teams mixed up. I think it was Team X was the name of it. Yeah, it wasn't as cool as Task Force X. It was just Team X. But if you guys remember, like the first like 10 to 15 minutes of Wolverine Origins, when the movie was actually still good before it went to shit, like that team actually is responsible for stealing something that was really important to Omega Red's survival. Now, they stole something, I believe it's called like the carbonadium synthesizer. And it's a device that can be used to kind of either slow down or just outright reverse the effects of like the carbonadium poisoning that Omega Red is experiencing. The issue, though, is that, he doesn't know where to find this shit, but he knows that a member of Team X does know where that shit's at. Especially the likes of, again, Sabretooth or Wolverine or Maverick. Those are like the main three. Maverick is also Agent Zero. He has like a couple different names. And again, I just thought it was fucking interesting that like all of them were in that damn shitty Wolverine movie. Anywho, so now that we've gone over a little bit of his origin story and a little bit about what he can do, where's the perfect place to put him? The perfect place to put him is in Deadpool 3. But obviously that won't happen, right? So then the perfect place to put him is probably going to be with whatever solo Wolverine story they plan on telling next. That's where I would put him. And now that can be years down the line, but I'm willing to wait if the movie is going to be worth it. And I think it very well could be. So that's what I would do. I think that a solo Wolverine movie with Omega Red would be perfect. And it'll be great, right? Because the likes of John Wraith, Maverick, even Sabretooth, they don't know where that goddamn carbonadium synthesizer is in the comic books. But Wolverine actually does. He does know where it is. But he's just like, fuck you, Omega Red. You know? So I think that would be a great ploy. And also, when we eventually bring back Logan to the big screen with a different actor, we're gonna need a new first face to have him go up against. And I think that there's just Omega Red is I think he's the obvious answer to go with, because you can also place him at any time period as well. Like if you want him to be pre-Wolverine joining the X-Men, you can do that. Do you want this to be, when Wolverine was part of like the Canadian Task Force? It can be then. When he was part of Team X, like the Weapon X program, it can be that. What do you want him to be at? It can be during the Alpha Flight days. Whenever you want it to be, it can be. It doesn't really matter. He is a savage psychopath who goes around murdering people. Oh, by the way, the slight variation for his origin story, because I said there was like two. The other one is fairly simple and similar to the origin story I just explained to you guys. The only difference is that instead of being caught and captured by Banshee, he's just murdering people in a very small village. He's not a military man in this telling of his origin. But because he's murdering people in such a small area, it's not hard to figure out who the fucking murderer is. And he's caught, captured, and killed. Only he's not, because the motherfucker had survived. Probably because of his healing factor. And they were like, holy shit, this guy survived. They're shooting him in the back of the fucking head. Let's see what we can do with this guy. Because that's what you do with a murderous psychopath, right? Who doesn't die. You experiment on him and make him better, all right? Gotta love comic books sometimes. But anyways, yeah, so that's the first entry on my list here. Omega Red, he's badass. Fucking use him and use him right. I don't know if you guys remember seeing him in that deleted clip in Deadpool 2. I was not a fan of his look. No disrespect to the special effects team that worked on him or makeup and design that worked on him. It just did not look good. So I see why it was deleted. All right, next up, let's do a DC one here. We just did a Marvel one. Let's do a DC one. And I'm going to have to try to get through these a little bit faster here. I'm wasting time doing all this damn talking. All right, let's go with... We'll go with Brainiac. Man, Brainiac. The interesting thing about about these comic book characters, right, is that the older they are, the more convoluted their history is. And now for both Marvel and DC, I myself have my own personal cutoffs for what I consider to be canon and what I consider to be no longer canon. And for DC, for me, that is anything that takes place after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And for the DC comic nerds, that's simply known as post-Crisis. So anything post-Crisis is canon, anything pre-Crisis is not. With that being said, Brainiac has about four origins. He's got a lot of different fucking origin stories here. But for brevity's sake, and for the sake of what I'm doing with this episode, I want to discuss the origin that I personally think is best, and the one that I think that they should use in a live action adaptation. But before that, Brainiac was created by Otto Binder and Al Pacino, and I believe he was created in like the 1950s, like 1958. He's an old head. He's been around for a while. Old Brainiac. Uh, Brainiac's real name is Dox. Good grief, Vril Dox. Name is hard as shit to say. Anyways, Mr. Dox here. So I'm not gonna talk about like all of his fucking origin stories, but like it is kind of fascinating how things have just shifted and changed with the character over the years. Because if you look at like his original origin and his original tellings, you know, you're like, why do so many people compare him to Ultron? And then you get to like more modern retellings, and you're like, that's why people compare him to Ultron, or I should say, compare Ultron to Brainiac. But yeah, he had an origin story where like, you know, he was from like the planet, what was it, planet Kalu, and he was like this extreme alien intelligence seeking knowledge, and he was shrinking cities. He's responsible for the shrinking of Kandor, the metropolis city, or the metropolis city, the Superman city that you always see in Superman's lair. Is that shrunken Kryptonian city that he keeps in a jar. Superman's just not being mean. He just can't figure out a way to restore Kandor to his full size. Fun fact, if you read Dark Knight, The Master Race, it is all about that, all about Kandor being restored to his full size. And while that's probably a really bad fucking idea. Anywho, that was just one of Brainiac's feats. Another one of his origin story tells that he was in fact an android made by the alien people from planet Kalu. And you know, they just didn't want to create anything that was more intelligent than them that could overthrow them. So he didn't have all of their full intelligence, but pretty damn close. Similar thing, but you know, slightly different. There was an origin story where he was a fucking mad scientist on planet Kalu. And because of his radical ways, they were going to kill him. Because that's what you do with these fucking mad scientists. You never know what they're going to do. Might create Frankenstein, you know? And so because he was a mad radical scientist with these crazy ass ideas, they were going to just fucking off him. And the moment that they do, his consciousness met contact with somebody who was like an extreme telepath of sorts, mentalist, and transference of consciousness, blah, 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 convoluted nonsense. We're not talking about this. The origin story that we're going to talk about for Brainiac is going to be the best origin story for Brainiac, in my humble opinion. And that origin story is the same one that was used in the Superman animated series and also in the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited animated series. And if you are a child of the millennium, then you know what I'm talking about. This is the origin story where Brainiac was, in fact, an extremely intelligent AI created by Jor-El on Krypton for the sole purpose of storing information, knowledge, and for preserving Kryptonian nature and culture, amongst other things as well. But an extremely intelligent AI, sentient AI. And the whole idea behind Brainiac going rogue in this origin story was just the idea that his prime directive overruled all, which is collect and store knowledge. And when you have any kind of prime directive with like a singular AI like this, shit always goes sideways. You know, so he chronicled the destruction of Krypton and, you know, the destruction of all these other civilizations. And he's not just taking notes. He's almost like a fucking evil kid with a magnifying glass experimenting. And when you have all this knowledge, then you kind of come to the here we go again, the Ultron dilemma, which is the only way to save these people is to destroy them. You come across that fucking fallacy in the logic with these rogue AIs, and that's exactly what Brainiac does here. I think that is the best telling of Brainiac's origin. In terms of Brainiac's powers, my goodness, he is one of those entities where you have to just wipe him out absolutely because he's programming. He's an idea, and how do you destroy an idea? So in ways, I think that he is much more frightening than Ultron because even though we as a society would be fucked if we destroyed Ultron, because that means that we destroy every shred of advanced technology we have. So every smart TV, you got a smart microwave, that's just got to go. You got a fucking smart car, that's just got to go. Your car has a CPU in it or a ECU in it, got to go. We're going back to the fucking old ways. So basically anything electronic would have to be destroyed and fucking wiped off. All satellites, we'd be sent back to the Stone Ages. But Ultron can be stopped. It would just suck for us, but he can be stopped. With Brainiac, it takes it a step further because he's not native to Earth. So stopping him is much more difficult. And most canons is of the idea that if you can maybe destroy his flagship, then that can help take him down. But who's to say that would even work? And so it's one of those cases where, like Ultron, you just kind of slow him down, but do you ever really stop him? Other than that, yes, he is also very similar to Ultron, or vice versa, because Brainiac was created first, in the sense that he has the ability to create a hive of drones that can do his bidding, that are him, shared consciousness. He has, what's it called when you can just control all technology? That word. He has that ability, technopathy, something like that, right? Telekinesis. I believe he's exhibited forms of telepathy even. He has extreme intelligence. Like, this man doesn't even play 4D chess. That's boring to him. He plays like 12D chess. He is thinking so many steps ahead. And that's really what makes him frightening, right? And that's why I always like the concept of Brainiac, because here's an enemy that Superman just can't punch, that the Justice League just can't smash. They have to figure out a way to really stop this thing and think ahead. So yeah, Brainiac would be amazing. Honestly, I am completely fine with them saving Brainiac for the next Justice League movie. And that could be 10 years from now. That's okay. I'm not worried about a time frame here. I'm worried about quality. And I think Brainiac would be an excellent Justice League villain. I mean, he fits right in just because he's the villain where the heroes team up with the villains to figure out a way to stop. Like Lex Luthor will stop what the fuck he's doing if it means stopping Brainiac. So if you can find a way to get Brainiac, to get Brainiac to fucking stop what he's doing and to find a way to subdue him, congratulations, you're a smart motherfucker. So yeah, Brainiac would be an amazing choice. During my research for him, I figured out some shit that I did not know about this character though. He appeared in Smallville, which I did not know. That must have been after all. I think I watched like the first 6 or 7 seasons, and I don't know if he shows up in any of those seasons, but I don't remember him being in there. But he also showed up in the show Krypton, and I gotta be honest, I forgot about that show. The show Krypton was on the air during that weird period of like the DC extended universe. I don't even know what it was a part of or not, but Krypton, it was like the show Gotham, but for Superman. You know how the show Gotham is about a young Bruce Wayne before he becomes Batman, but it's not even about really about Bruce Wayne. It's about a younger Commissioner Gordon, and I don't. I'm going to talk about Gotham a little bit later, so I'm not going to talk about it too much right now. But Krypton, it focuses on Superman's grandfather, whose name is Segel. And in the first season of that show, I suppose Brainiac is like the main thing that they deal with there. The show only had 2 seasons, and I think maybe the worst part about the show was that it was on Sci-Fi Channel. No disrespect to the Sci-Fi Channel. I enjoyed the hell out of that channel when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. But I mean, it just doesn't have the best reputation for quality shows. And I looked at the ratings for the Krypton show, and season 1 was kind of middling, but season 2 apparently was pretty damn good. The show really found its footing in the second season, but unfortunately it got canceled. So that's on like the long list of random shows that are superhero related that I haven't seen. I'll put it on the shelf next to like Agent Carter and Pennyworth, you know. Anywho, that's Brainiac. He'd be amazing to see in a live action movie though. I do not have any clue who plays any of these characters. I'm terrible at that game. I don't know. But if you guys have any ideas, let me know. Next up, we'll go back to Marvel here. Okay, we'll do this one because this one will take up considerably less time. This is a character that also kind of has an asterisk next to his name because we've technically seen this character several times. And that character is Maestro. And Maestro is an evil version of the Hulk. Listen, there are very few things in comic books that make me uncomfortable or that can make me shiver. Maestro is one of them. Because I don't really think people like comprehend. It's not just that it's, smart Hulk doing bad things. It's so much more than that. Maestro is twisted. Maestro is sick. And when you throw in like the things that Mark Miller wrote for the character in the book Old Man Logan, then it just gets amplified. It's rough out there for a fucking Hulk, But Maestro was created by Peter David and George Perez, both fucking legends. All these creators I've named have been legends, though. Man, Peter David was busy in the 90s. Peter David he's got to have the longest Hulk run, period. Like, I don't know who wrote the Hulk longer than him, but it wasn't just that he wrote the Hulk for a long time. It's also really good, Contrast that with the likes of Dan Slott, who wrote Spider-Man for 10 years, but maybe only had 2 or 3 good stories. Yeah, I'm shitting on Dan Slott. I think he's mad overrated. Anyway, spare bullets aside, so the whole idea for Maestro, like the whole way that he came about was at some point in Marvel history, right, during this canonical telling of events, there was basically like another world war, essentially. And there were nukes that were launched, and society and civilization as we know it wiped out. But while most people, most things, most places died, obviously the Hulk did not. But the Hulk, along with a few others who are immune to that type of radiation, were taken by AIM, Advanced Ideal Mechanics, and they were experimented on. And the whole idea behind their experimentations were to try to figure out a way to not just siphon the gamma radiation from them, but a way that they could replicate like the Hulk's ability to negate damage from that radiation. Because right now, that's kind of what society needs. That's what they need. AIM isn't worried about society. They're worried about themselves. And AIM is also always the ones working on like the weird shit. I mean, they made MODOK for fuck's sake, you know. How much weirder can you get? And this that was like the boss's son who they turned into MODOK, you know. Yeah, fucking MODOK, man. Weird cat. Anywho, after a long fucking time, the Hulk finally breaks free from this facility. And he's not quite evil yet, right? As a matter of fact, he goes to like a resistance base and he finds a group of people there who are led by a guy named Maestro. Except Maestro isn't the Hulk, obviously. He just got there. Maestro was Hercules. And what I really love about this part of the story is it showcases Hercules being fucking Hercules. Like he is strong and powerful as shit. And you know, he and the Hulk several times throughout this story, but for brevity's sake, I'm gonna go ahead and get here. He and the Hulk battle it out, and at first, you know, Hulk loses again, and but then he comes back, and you know, through various devious means, Hulk is able to get the upper hand on Hercules, and he's killed. Long story short, but what we learn here is that um, because of like the prolonged exposure to this radiation, the Hulk has grown A, stronger, not a bad thing, but he's also grown B, crazy. This shit has affected him. And the way that, or the reason why he has Bruce Banner's consciousness now is because it's been so long. And this, part of this is my personal theory crafting. And part of this is also like the actual canon of the story. But, you know, my personal headcanon on this is that the Hulk inherited Bruce's intelligence simply because Bruce cannot transform back into Bruce Banner. It would just spell death for Bruce if he did that. If he went back to Bruce Banner, first of all, he'd be like over 100 years old because Hulk was kept in that AIM facility for years. So Bruce would be fucking ancient. He'd just fucking wither away and die. He and the Hulk won't be having that, especially the Hulk. Hulk ain't having that. But, you know, on top of that, you know, just the whole idea that this gamma radiation has seeped into the Hulk's brain, and this nuclear fallout is just really fucking enhancing him and making him fucking mad. It has driven him crazy. And that's really the scary part about Maestro, is that not only does he have the imposing strength of the Hulk, not only is he technically a stronger version of the Hulk, but he's menacing and he's sick and he's deranged. Now, where do you put the Hulk in the MCU? How does that fit in? What do you do with a character like that? Me personally, I would use him in one of a few various ways. One, if Marvel is still interested in doing this sort of time travel-y stuff, then there's your antagonist. You know, if a hero accidentally gets flung into a savage future where a villain wins and the result is nuclear war and fallout, and the only survivor there, or the only strong survivor there, is the Hulk, Maestro, I think that's a pretty cool story. Now, who do you put in that protagonist seat? I don't know. You guys let me know. Hit me up at superherohomies@gmail.com or any of the social media outlets. I'm always active, live, and listening. And I love getting feedback from you guys. Anywho, I don't really know what you would do in terms of like the protagonist there, because honestly, the protagonist won't be the star. It'll be Maestro. I'm telling you, done right, Maestro steals the scene. The only person who could upstage Maestro would be Wolverine, and if they decided to do like a comic book accurate Old Man Logan. That's the only way, though. Other than that, it won't really matter who you make the protagonist in a movie like that. Um, I mean, and then this right here is just kind of wishful thinking to the nth degree, but hell, if Maestro could appear in Deadpool 3, fucking phenomenal. It may be the only time we get to see the Hulk versus Wolverine, you know? Yeah, so I know I'm just wishful thinking there, just throwing that out there, but you know, it'd be cool as fuck to see, and you guys know it. But the whole idea though is this: Maestro, he's just too cool of a villain to leave on the sideline, and also I think that this will give Mark Ruffalo a chance to really flex his chops as the character. He's played the Hulk for a long time now, and the character to me has only gotten tamer and lamer. So to do something like this with the character would be a great step in the right direction. Hell, there's been rumors that they want to do an adaptation of World War Hulk, but I think that's been shut down. But if they wanted to do that, find a way to bring Maestro in the picture. I think that works. All right, next up, let's go back to DC here. Uh, let's go ahead and go with Clayface. So Clayface, he was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, the OG Batman duo, the OG creative team behind Batman. And I think it was created like back in 1940, so a long fucking time ago. Possibly the oldest character on my list. Actually, I'm pretty sure he is. But here's the thing about that, though. I knew that there were several Clayfaces, but it wasn't until my research for this episode that I learned there's like, is it 6 different Clayfaces? Maybe more. There's at least 6 different variations of Clayface. I'm only focusing on one. Basil Carlo. That is the one that I know the most. That is the one that I like the most. And honestly, I think that's the one that, for the most part, has been used the most. You know, so like there's been, like I said, a lot of different clay faces, but for my money, I am really only interested in just the one. I guess a close second would be the second Clayface, Matt Hagen. He's been used quite a few times as well. But oftentimes, or at least in my favorite telling of the character, there was like a combination of the two. The first one was Basil Carlo, and the second one, Matt Hagen. Like, those two were kind of fused together for Batman the Animated Series. So if you guys remember those episodes that featured Clayface, he had more of an origin story akin to Basil Carlo, but he had like the shape shifting and the name of Matt Hagen. And again, man, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini were just fucking masterminds. Like, that show can never be replicated unless they do it again, you know. But I do want to talk about a couple different origins here for Basil, just because they were very fucking interesting. I won't be going much into like any of the other clay faces. I'm really just going to be focusing on Basil here. But here's what's interesting, right? Because again, I'm a post-crisis kid, meaning that all of my canon event I get from post-crisis on Infinite Earths. So I've always known I've always known Basil Carlo as a shapeshifter. He has not always been a shapeshifter. Holy shit. I'm not gonna lie, guys, that blew my mind. I don't read Golden Age comic books. I only read certain Silver Age comic books. I mean, in terms of like the comic book ages, I mean, really, I'm a Bronze Age on down kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a 80s on down. I love 80s comic books. Love 90s, 2000s on forward. But man, if you go too far into the 70s, I can't get into it. The 60s, I cannot dig it. And then you go into the golden age, like the 40s and 50s. You lost me, pal. I appreciate those comic books. I cannot read them. And it's just, different times, different writing styles and structures. I appreciate what they are and what they've done. But man, yeah, after all that time, retcons are needed. But I thought that his origin story was interesting looking back at it. So Basil Carlo, the first quote unquote Clayface, wasn't even really a Clayface. His origin story will start off sounding familiar to most of you, I'm sure. He was a failed actor who was having a hard time getting work. And he eventually just becomes I don't want to say jealous. That sounds like it's undermining the man's emotions, this fictional character's emotions. But eventually he goes very displeased with the fact that they're I think they're either they're remaking a movie that he was in. I believe this is what they were doing. And they were remaking him, but he wasn't in it. Like he wasn't actually going to be in the movie that he originally starred in. And that just sets him the fuck off because this man loves acting, and the fact that they're moving on without him, doing another, and man, even then, apparently people hated remakes. But what he does is he dons on a Clayface outfit that was from a previous horror movie that he starred in. And wearing that outfit, he goes around and starts killing people. And it's up to Batman and Robin to stop him. Boy, that shit blew my mind when I discovered he wasn't a shape-shifting menace. I was like, what? Matt Hagen, the second Clayface, was actually the first one to shapeshift, and his origin story was also a little interesting. Just a brief snippet on his. He was like some kind of treasure hunter who found like this grove or grotto of like weird ass liquid goop, and when he stepped in it, he came out a shapeshifter. But it was only temporary, so he had to keep going back to it to retain his powers. But now to fast forward to the most current telling of his origin, and honestly the best telling of his origin. I believe it's actually post New 52 for me. It's DC Rebirth, I think, and it's because DC Rebirth they did something extremely smart with their retelling of the Clayface origin story, and that is they really just adapted what the TV show did, the Batman animated series TV show, and they just kind of put their own spin on it, which I thought was kind of brilliant. So for those of you who are familiar with Batman, the animated series, tell me if any of this sounds familiar. So Basil Carlo, he is a fledgling actor. Well, wants to get more work. Daggett Rowland has this, has or at least has access to this chemical called New You. In the animated series, they also used Roland Daggett, and they also used it was a form of New You, but it was called something else. It was called like Renew You, I think is what it was called in the animated TV show. Also, fun fact, Roland Daggett was also used in what movie was he in? Dark Knight Rises. He's I was gonna say he's the guy that Bane kills, but Bane kind of kills a lot of people. He was the guy where Bane was like, "And this gives you power over me," and he was like, "What are you?" And Bane was like, "I am Gotham's Reckoning." That guy was Roland Daggett. I don't know if they ever say his name in the movie, but apparently in the credits, yeah, that's who they give the credit to. Pretty cool stuff, pretty snazzy. But Roland Roland Daggett, who was like the company or the CEO of this certain company, evil sick bastard. He's got access to this shit called New You, and basically what it does is that it's like the ultimate skin cleansing product, right? Like you can see that shit being fucking used in all types of commercials, like what's it called, Neutrogena or whatnot. Anywho, but they Basil uses this stuff, and it does restore his youth, but also on top of that, it gives him like the ability to kind of morph himself. Uh, but eventually, what ended up happening here is that Basil, he's and again, like it's kind of it's interesting, right? Because like they this is just a retelling of like Batman the animated series, but it's cool as shit how they did it though. Uh, we see Basil and he's using the new you, but eventually that shit because of overexposure and whatnot, it morphs him and he becomes Clayface. Long story short, but it doesn't just morph him physically; it morphs him um, emotionally as well. You know, kind of the cool thing about Basil is that most times you see him, he's not all there. It's almost like he's experiencing multiple things at one time. Like he's not in a Doctor Manhattan sense, but in the sense of where like he's reliving something that's not really going on at the current moment. You know, like if you read any of James Tynion's Batman run, like the Rise and Fall of the Batman, Clayface is actually one of the main characters there on that team, and his psyche is something interesting to say the least. Great series, by the way. If you guys are looking for another fun Batman book, as if there's not enough of those, Rise and Fall of the Batman was a really, really cool, fun book. Uh, yeah, where was I? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, the thing about Clayface here is he obviously has the ability to shapeshift and to harden his body at times and to form his body into weapons like fucking battle axes or swords. And he can also make his body, um, what's the right word? Gooey? Gooey doesn't sound right, but maybe it is. Um, yeah, he can make his body so like say for example if you try to punch him, your hand's just gonna stick inside of him, and then from there he can harden his body so you can't remove your hand, and then he can just pummel the shit out of you, which is why it makes it so difficult to battle someone like Clayface. Uh, but Clayface is one of those villains that Batman does take pity on. He does feel sorry for this guy. Um, yeah, so with Clayface is really one of those tragic type Batman villains, and there's a few of those. Batman he typically tends to take pity on the likes of Mister Freeze, Clayface. Um, man, I'm trying to blank. Fucking what's his name? You guys know the he has DID with the puppet Scarface. I forget the guy's name. Holy shit. Again, like most things, it'll come back to me when it is no longer relevant. Ventriloquist. Fucking hell. It was still relevant. Yeah, Batman typically tends to take a little bit of pity on some of those villains. And there's a few others. Uh, but yeah, that right there's a little bit there on Clayface. Um, yeah, I in terms of like when to use him though, I think that maybe the perfect time to use someone like Clayface is probably I would say in like a Batman a sequel to the Batman. I think he works well there, but I understand if they don't use him there because they want to use something that's more grounded in reality for that universe. So I would say for like they could use him in like the upcoming Batman and Robin movie that they plan on doing. I would say leave the super grounded material to the Batman universe, but for the DCU, I'd say for that just go full out, just go full comic book and use a character like Clayface. And Clayface is so interesting, right? Because you have a shapeshifter who can be anyone, be anywhere, and you don't know what you're dealing with. I apologize if I sound like a broken record, but I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies. I love that movie, and a part of that movie that makes it so good is just the air of suspense and just not knowing, right? And Clayface provides that type of thrill for me. So yeah, Clayface would be great. Basil Carlo, um, failed actor, uses drug paraphernalia, skin cream, discontinued because it causes bullshit to happen. Uses too much of it, becomes a giant clay monster, can't keep his form. Holy shit, that's bad news. You got Clayface. All right. Let's see here. Which one do I want to do next? We just did another DC one, so let's roll back over here to Marvel. I already did Omega Red. I already did Maestro. Oh shit. Well, next we'll do motherfucking Molecule Man. Owen Reese is his real name. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I didn't write that one down, but I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong on that one. They were the only two motherfuckers writing Fantastic Four back in the day, so it would have had to have been them. Uh, Shout out to those two goats. Anyways, a Molecule Man. This is a character that I don't think Stan and Jack were aware at how insanely overpowered they made him when they did. Uh, there's a reason why, even if you read a lot of Fantastic Four, if you read a lot of Marvel comics in general, there's a reason why you don't see Molecule Man all that much. I imagine it's probably for like a similar reason as to why you don't see the Sentry all that much. It's not because they don't like these characters, it's because they don't know what the fuck to do with them. We have someone that's so incredibly powerful, especially a villain like Molecule Man. What the fuck do you do? And in years since, they have kind of adjusted Molecule Man to be more of a kind of a force of nature slash like malleable ally at times. He's lost his fucking mind though over the years as well. Like he went from being like a timid kind of unconfident guy. If you go back to like Secret Wars era, to being just this fucking kind of crazed, and he's not crazy in the sense of like the Joker, or crazy in the sense of like a psychopath killer. He's a killer in this. I mean, he's a killer. He's a psychopath in the sense of, or he's a fucking crazy in the sense of you don't really know what's going on in his brain, and the littlest thing can set him off, or the littlest thing can make him happy. You know, that's kind of where he's at in more recent iterations. Or he could be speaking plain and insane one moment and then fucking insane in the membrane the next. But in terms of like his origin story and what this guy can do, so he was like a low level worker at this. You guys can probably just fill in the blanks here. Was like this extremely high profile research facility that had this experimental particle generator, right? It's always, see, that's the problem, right? It was an experimental particle generator. Had it just been a particle generator, maybe Owen Reese would have been fine. But because it was experimental, he had to get Dr. Manhattan, you know? But this thing accidentally goes off, right? And it triggers and it fucking blasts him. And at first, he doesn't really think anything is that wrong, or that different. He's got like a slightly different appearance from where he's been hit with this thing. This really is like the lightning bolts from. But other than that, he think he's good. The funny part is his boss, like the guy who owns the company, when he saw like what happened with the particle generator and you know the accident that happened there, and that Owen Reese was involved, he fired him. So this guy gets hit with an experimental particle generator, comes back to work the next day, gets fired, and get this, the boss didn't even know the guy's name, and he had been working there for like 12 years. And the boss was like, who is this fucking guy? Get rid of him. And get rid of the guy who messed up the particle generator. It's the same person? Holy shit. Yeah, we'll fire him twice. You know, I just like to think that's how it went down, even though I doubt that's how it actually went down. But yeah, he was extremely unconfident in himself, right? And he just didn't have, and it's I like to think of it as like you guys remember fucking Electro in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Um, I think of him like that. You know what I mean? Except without that comb over, he didn't have that going for him. But in terms of what he can do, well, the user question is what can't he do? Not only can he change molecules just like that into whatever he wants it to be, he can do more than just manipulate molecules. He can essentially create or destroy ex nihilo, just at will. It can be something from nothing. And he can change things. He can change people, which when he figured that shit out, he was off to the races. But he was always been a wild card. Even I mentioned Secret War earlier. Even even during that Jim Shooter book, that book that was made just to sell toys ended up being one of the most pivotal books in Marvel Comics history. He was the wild card, both then and during the 2015 Secret Wars. Doctor Doom uses and kind of manipulates Molecule Man into getting what he wants, because he knows it's better to have this man as like a loose ally than a fucking enemy. You don't want Molecule Man as an enemy. But speaking of the 2015 Secret Wars era, it was during the Jonathan Hickman era of Avengers that we realized the Beyonders actually played a part in creating Molecule Man. He's like one of the biggest and most important Nexus figures in all of Marvel Comics. He has to exist in every existence of Marvel, or every existence of the Marvel Universe, essentially. Even more so than Wanda Maximoff. Like, he is the most important Marvel Nexus character. There needs to be a Molecule Man, according to the Beyonders. And yes, there are multiple Beyonders. Most people like myself hate that idea, and we just kind of pretend that there's only one. But no, there's several in reality. Like a whole race of Beyonders. But anyways, Molecule Man obviously would be best used in a Fantastic Four movie. The way I would use him is I would have him work in the Baxter building. And I would have the experimental particle generator be something that Reed Richards is working on, trying to refine. And I mean, I just think it makes it more personal that way. If Owen Reese is hit by this particle generator that Reed was working on. And, granted, does Reed Richards need something else to feel guilty about? He doesn't. But I think it does make a lot of sense. Now, with Molecule Man, you really have to play your cards close to the vest, right? And you really have to play into the idea. Maybe you have to lean into like the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby era of Molecule Man, because when he first got his powers way back in the day, right, he was still unconfident. He still did not believe in himself. And it was to the point where he didn't think his powers worked on people. He thought they only worked on like inanimate objects. So they may have to put that kind of nerf on him just to make him a something that the Fantastic Four can actually deal with. Because when you think about like the Fantastic Four and like their rogue gallery, for their first outing, you don't want to use Galactus. You don't want to use Silver Surfer. But do you want to use like the Mole Man? You know what I mean? Like maybe it's like a secondary villain, but also like Molecule Man is just so fucking OP. But a lot of times these movies do have a way of nerfing these characters to make them more manageable and easier to deal with. But I overall I think that yeah, for the first Fantastic Four movie, if they have to use two villains, don't use Doom, don't use Galactus, don't use Silver Surfer. Maybe use a combination of the Mole Man and Molecule Man, but maybe there's too many M's, too many M villains. Fuck it, get rid of Mole Man then. Like no one no one really cares about the Mole Man anyway. Fuck him. Just use Molecule Man, and he has to be a villain that you have to reconcile with. You know, you have to reason with, because you're not gonna beat him with brute force. Um, I was gonna say the Fantastic Four for their first villains could also use the scrolls, but Marvel fucked that all the way up. Not once, but twice. Once in Captain Marvel, and again in Secret Invasion. So man, Marvel's really they got an extraordinary batting average when it comes to the scrolls. Okay, I'm not upset. You guys are upset about it. I'm fine. I don't care at all. But that's a little bit there about the Molecule Man. I think again he'd be really fucking cool just because of all the potentials, all the possibilities, and Marvel seems to be in their Nexus bag right now, in their multiversal bag right now. You have a character who, hell, he could be responsible for destroying the universe that the Fantastic Four come from, and maybe we get a Fantastic Four that isn't from the current MCU universe. Maybe they're from a different universe. Maybe Molecule Man has traveled there after destroying the previous one. Maybe that sets off like an incursion event because one Earth is destroyed before its time. It sets off a chain reaction, you know? So there's multiple ways they could play with Molecule Man. Um, it just depends on what they really want to do. And for fuck's sake, all of this is really dependent on how well the scripts are written. Moving on here, moving right along. Let's go back to DC. We've been flip flopping here. Scratch out Molecule Man. I haven't talked about this guy yet. Let's talk about Mongol. Mongol would be fucking perfect to use in your Superman movie coming up. I don't know if there's going to be like a singular Superman villain. If reports are correct and they are in some way, shape, or form adapting All Star Superman, then no, it's not going to focus on just a singular villain. I mean, if anything, it's going to be a Superman and Lex type story. But they are doing a Supergirl movie, and that's at this point, I don't know what the fuck that's going to be about. I know it's going to be based off of the Tom King graphic novel, which means it will probably be extremely and overly emotional. Man, I'm sorry, I gotta rant real quick. Tom King is overrated as fuck. I really wanted to like that guy's work, but everything he does just results in fucking emotional garbage, right? I mean, god damn, man. He wrote one or two books where that formula really worked, but it was around the time when he got to his Batman work. I despise his Batman run. The start of his run, called the I Am trilogy, like I Am Gotham, I Am Bane, I Am whatever, it was dumb as fuck. And I can go into a whole soliloquy about why it is stupid as shit. But now it's not the time or the place. But yeah, his whole Batman run was just, every time he do something good, because there are some good moments, he do something fucking nonsensical. He do something that will make Batman look like a fucking bitch and a coward, and I didn't even know who to root for sometimes. Oof. And I dare not read that man's Rorschach book. He wrote a book, not like an actual book, he wrote a comic book, about the character Rorschach. Listen, you guys know I love The Watchmen, but Tom King, I think Tom King has like weird mommy issues slash an Oedipus complex, because that's how all of his male characters are written anyway. He wrote a book on like Vision and Wanda. Somehow he made Vision seem like a blubbering mess in Wanda's arms. He wrote The Mr. Terrific book and Mr. Terrific and Big Barda is the same thing. The relationship that Bruce has with Selena in his Batman book, it's all the same shit, bro. And it's just, ugh, ugh. It was cool once, maybe even twice, but man. Anywho, rant over. Yeah, Tom King. He's on the chopping block along with Dan Slott and being overrated as fuck. All right. I promise I won't shit on any more comic book creators tonight. Maybe. Yeah. So what was I saying anyway? Mongol. Mongol is an incredible villain. I like Mongol a lot because for those of you who don't know who Mongol is, he is the ruler of World, a planet that I have a hard time saying. My W's and R's do not appreciate the name of that planet at all. So don't ask me to say it again. And if you want me to say it again, just look it up. Google Mongol, and it'll tell you where he's from. And I'm pretty sure it's going to say that place. Um, yeah, Mongol was created by Lin Wayne and Jim Starlin, another legendary duo. Uh, I feel that like most of these creators I've named tonight, most of you guys are very familiar with, and you know, give your props to, as we all should. But I feel that like Lin Wayne is probably the one of the creators who just don't get the props that he deserves. First of all, rest in peace to Mr. Lin Wayne. He passed away a few years ago, back now, but I mean, he's responsible for creating, well, Mongol for one, Swamp Thing, and a character by the name of Wolverine, and many, many more, by the way. But those are just three of the characters that this man's created. He's been a part of like some really big storylines and character creation. So I've always had a great appreciation for Lin. Wish he was still with us, but and of course Jim Starlin is Jim Starlin. Uh, so Mongol. Here's the thing: like in terms of this man's origin, I'll be honest. I don't think he actually has a fucking origin story. He doesn't need one. He's goddamn Mongol. For those of you who need like a reference point for Mongol, because I just keep saying his name in a very giddy fashion. If you guys have seen James Gunn's The Suicide Squad movie, he is not in it. That would break the rules of this episode. But instead, Mongol, his daughter, is in the movie, Mongal. She's in it for about 32 seconds. you know, she's one of like the 7 or 8 members of the Suicide Squad that get obliterated in the opening scene. Uh, I mean, they understood the assignment though. She looked just like Mongal in the movie. Big as fuck, strong as fuck, looked like Mongal but female. Look like Mongol but female. She extremely strong. So yeah, that's the closest that Mongol has had to a live action appearance. So the reason why I think that they should use Mongol in a movie is because I don't know. You don't want to go back to Dark Side right now. We just got blue ball with Dark Side in the Snyder cut. I was so happy to see him, but that's all we get to see of Dark Side. Uh, and oftentimes people compare the two, Dark Side to Mongol. In reality, Dark Side is way more stronger, but Mongol, he ain't no fucking pushover, right? Like you can't just put any strong member of the Justice League against Mongol. I mean, I love Wonder Woman. You can't put her up there against Mongol. I love Hawkman, but in theory, he shouldn't be able to beat Mongol either. I believe it was in the Injustice book. We covered that a few years ago, and around the time that the book started to get bad, like in years, like was it 4 and 5? Yeah, those last 2 years of Injustice that were getting pretty fucking bad. Hawkman became a one-dimensional character who was just nothing but rage and anger and fucking, I don't know what his fucking problem was. He goes to War World to fight Mongol. And in order, he does it in terms of a compromise, right? Because he wants to find a way to be Superman, and Mongol gives him what we later find out was a giant chunk of kryptonite that Hawkman forms into a battle mace to bludgeon the shit out of Superman with. That's all irrelevant. The reason I bring that up is that we don't see the fight between Hawkman and Mongol, but just based off the fact that he returns with a kryptonite mace tells us that he got what he went there for. And in reality, Hawkman should probably be dead. um, Mongol, he has received a few nerfs since his pre-crisis days. I mean, the guy used to just be functionally invulnerable. Hell, maybe he still is. But fact of the matter is this: he has powers and strength on par with Superman. Like he can go toe to toe with Superman all day long. He loves that shit. War World is basically just like think about Planet Sakaar from Planet Hulk, where it was just a gladiator pit, right? And people on the planet were suffering and starving and didn't have any of their necessities met, but they were distracted by the Red Prince or whatever his name was. Red Prince may be a character from Divinity. I think this guy's name was also Red Prince, though. Yeah, the main bad guy, the dickhead from Planet Hulk. He kept the people distracted with these gladiatorial events. And that's kind of what Mongol does on Warworld. I'm getting better at saying that. Hell yeah. But that's essentially what Mongol does, though. He has these gladiatory type events, and there's been times where he's coerced members of the Justice League to fighting, on this planet for their freedom. He has one of the best personalities of just like any DC villain, any villain period, right? I love his personality. Like he's so jovial with his evilness that it kind of makes it hard to dislike him, Like he's got a fucking twisted sense of humor, no sense of morality, no real sense of honor, except for that of the fight. You have to fight, and if you fight and if you win, then you get what he said he'd give you. But I think that he would be great. Again, maybe not for this upcoming Superman movie, but maybe if they want to do something interesting with this Supergirl movie, that's how it got started on Tom King, because he wrote the Supergirl book that the movie's supposed to be based on. I'm not going back down that road. Don't worry. But if they want to use Mongol in the Supergirl movie, I think that would be pretty fucking great. I mean, it will give us a chance to, because first of all, like, how many super people do we really need to see on Earth? Exactly. Not that many, right? So if they want to have a movie that takes place primarily off Earth, maybe she's going out and she's helping the residents of Warworld. That could be a premise there, or maybe, hell, I mean, there's several ways that they could go with this whole thing. But if they don't want to use Mongol in the Supergirl movie, honestly, another place where they could use him, upcoming Green Lantern project. If they want to use him in a Green Lantern movie, that would also be fucking phenomenal. Like, I like the idea of like there being a planet that was, once, no real threats or bothers or worries, but then suddenly it gets taken over and it's being transformed into a new world for Mongol, and it's up to the Green Lantern to put a stop to this guy. That would be a lot of fun, and there have been times in the past where we've seen the likes of Green Lantern battle Mongol. Again, he's punching above his Green Lantern's punching above his weight class, but that it makes it just more entertaining. So yeah, Mongol, he's just a fucking super strong, super fun personality villain that you could really kind of insert in various places. If you want to, you could use him for a Justice League movie. But honestly, I think that he would work better for like Supergirl or maybe a Superman sequel. And if not any of those, then a Green Lantern movie would be fucking perfect. All right, we are nearing the end of the list. We're almost there, guys. We're more than halfway there. And by more than halfway there, I mean I only have two more entries left here on the list. And I gotta get these done. It is almost fucking midnight, and I have to go to work tomorrow. Fucking work always getting in the way when I'm doing shit. All right, the last one I want to talk about for Marvel is a character, a villain, shrewd villain, by the name of Annihilus. Do I still have my spooky button? Nope. Spooky. Nope. Oh, Annihilus. X-Files is close enough. Yeah, so Annihilus, he was a character again created by Stan and Jack. And I believe he also made his first appearance in Fantastic Four. With the Fantastic Four being the space-faring family that they are, they love to travel the cosmos. White people always going places they shouldn't be. Am I right? I'm just joshing you. But Annihilus, he is from the negative zone, and he's actually the ruler of that place, and he uses a control rod of sorts to exert his power. And this control rod can do a lot of different shit for him. And in terms of like using him in a movie, he can be used just for that as a fucking MacGuffin, just as a catch-all. His control rod, it is not as much of a catch-all as like the Eye of Agamotto that Doctor Strange uses. Like I'll say this, in terms of like the MCU, the Eye of Agamotto being the time stone, like it's fine, but it's it's, dare I say, better than the Eye of Agamotto just being whatever the fuck the writers needed to be in Marvel Comics. Anyway, not to get off on a tangent about that. I like Doctor Strange comic books. They're fun as fuck. Annihilus uses his control rod for multiple things. He can use it to shield himself, as well as like his fucking hard ass body. By the way, Annihilus, he looks like a giant evil grasshopper. It's the best way I can describe it. Giant evil grasshopper. He also has control of the Annihilation Wave, which is a giant fleet, a giant armada that just fucking decimates everything and anything in its way. He's got extreme durability. He's got basically your typical Gambit, but it's really that control rod that gives him the edge. In most cases, if you can get rid of that control rod or wrest it from him, you stand a much better chance of beating him, Now, there's a reason why I say Annihilus should be used, and that's because back in the mid-2000s, Marvel Comics, they were getting their asses beat in the Universal cosmic affairs. When it came to cosmic-based comic books, DC was beating Marvel's ass with the likes of Blackest Night and like just the entirety of that Green Lantern run. Readers were loving that shit. In terms of Marvel, they were having a lot of success, but all of their success were basically Earth-based comic books. And it wasn't until the mid-2000s, around 04, 05-ish, where a group of writers and editorial got together and they put together this book called Annihilation. The guy who spearheaded that book was Keith Giffen. May he rest in peace. He actually just passed away, I believe, last year. But there was also Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. They're an amazing duo. I've loved basically everything that those two have written. Same thing with Keith Giffen. He actually created Lobo. Fun fact for you. But so together, those three, along with a few other writers and artists, created the Annihilation story. And I don't want to make this a review about that story, but it is pretty important to tie in as to why I think that they should use Annihilus in the MCU. It will prove difficult, however, because the end result of the Annihilation story the end result is we get the formation of the Guardians of the Galaxy as we currently know them. So if you guys like the team up that we've gotten in the James Gunn movie, then you can thank those three guys, and specifically Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, because they would go on to write that Guardians of the Galaxy story, the one that James Gunn drew all the inspiration from for his movies. But in terms of like this Annihilation story, it is big, it is vast, it is grand, and it feels like a cosmic epic. And it's just fantastic. The first time I read it, I really couldn't put it down. I didn't think I would be able to get that much into Marvel cosmic stuff, but they proved me wrong with that one. And it kind of put their cosmic scene back on the map to the point where several cosmic books came out of that, including Annihilation Conquest, like War of the Realms, Road to War of the Realms, War of the Realms Aftermath, War of the King, or Realm of the Kings. Like all kinds of cosmic books spun out of that. And it's an amazing collection of books to have and read. I'll tell you that much. But the reason why I mentioned all of that in relation to Annihilus is because the story Annihilation starts with Annihilus escaping the negative zone, and he leaves an army of his Annihilation Wave, and they just lay waste to the Marvel Cosmic Universe. And one of the first things they do is they completely annihilate the Nova Corps. And there's only one member of the Nova Corps left, and that is Richard Rider. Richard Rider was a member of the New Warriors back in the day, the original New Warriors. And that was one of Marvel's teenage team up books. They had several of those back in the day. Because they work, they sell between New Mutants and Teen Titans and New Warriors. Between Marvel and DC, you had a lot of different, teenage team up books. But, New Warriors, again, I'm not sure like what the sales were in those books, but I enjoyed what I read from them back in the day, but they were never like my favorite or whatever, but they were good. But, after like the popularity of that book died down, Richard Rider, Nova, didn't really have much to do. And so you really didn't see a whole lot of him up until the story. And same thing with a lot of the characters in Annihilation. You didn't see a lot of Annihilus until this story came back. Hell, Thanos is a secondary villain, and he had been kind of MIA for a while too, So really, Annihilation was just these creators using a lot of characters that had lost all their steam and revitalizing them, Also, there was not just a revitalization, but a retconning of Drax the Destroyer, Gamora, Ronan the Accuser, Star-Lord, like I already mentioned, Nova. Really, the only character in this that was like always kind of, a pretty hot character always was Silver Surfer. He has his own story arc in here as well. And basically everybody is at least familiar with Silver Surfer, All the other characters were lukewarm, but this Annihilation story made them all pretty fucking white hot again. But wrapping this or bringing this thing back around to Annihilus, this is not an Annihilation review, I promise. But Annihilus, he is able to use that Annihilation Wave to just fucking lay waste. And this was the first time that I ever took Annihilus really seriously as like a threat. For fuck's sake, like I said earlier, Thanos is laying back, playing second fiddle to Annihilus, because he knows better. He's like, if I fuck with this guy, I might be fucked. My purple asshole will get reamed if I try to fuck with Annihilus, with this giant evil cricket man. That's an exact quote from the comic books. Don't ask me what page. But what we end up seeing here is, they are eventually able to stop Annihilus, and the reason why this works so cool is because from the perspective of our heroes, like it's basically like a big ass space war. They are all at war, and so we get one story that is from Drax's POV, And we get his story, and when he's well, it's kind of a trope now, but when this was written, it wasn't so much a trope. But Drax has to protect this little girl named Cammy, and they go on their own adventures and whatnot. And Drax is trying to remember who the fuck he is. Fantastic story, great retelling of Drax's story, and us getting to know that character. We get like I said, a cool story from Silver Surfer's perspective, also from Super Scroll. And I'm trying to remember with Super Scroll, his story was super cool. uh, no pun intended. His story was also very super cool as well. But I don't remember if it was Pybok or Kilrit. I don't remember which Super Scroll it was, and I should know that, but I don't. It was one of those two, either Pybok or Kilrit. Uh, Ronan's story I thought was also really fucking good. But here's the thing, I was like, these are all like different chapters within this space epic, and then it kind of concludes with everybody from in their own way working together to stop Annihilus. So it's not like they all come together, put their hands in a circle, and say, "Stop Annihilus on three, 1, 2, 3, stop Annihilus." That's not what happens. It's more like they are on their respective sides of this battlefield, doing their part to save their sector of the universe they're in and stopping Annihilus. And the other thing about this that's so great was that this story was being written around the time of Civil War, the first Civil War book. And like I said, from my perspective and for, my money's worth, Marvel Comics was white hot back then. Like their stuff on Earth was incredible. Everything leading up to Civil War I thought was incredible. And then like the aftermath we got was incredible. And Marvel, they were just firing on all cylinders back then to me. And this is another example of it. We get one moment where Richard Rider, who was like the only protagonist in the story who is intimately familiar with Earth life, he tries to contact people on the heroes on Earth to let them know about with their impending doom. This annihilation wave is destroying and decimating everything, and he needs all the help that he can get, like for the sake of the universe. And the Avengers are basically like, "Sorry, bro, but we're fighting each other right now." And that sets them off, you know what I mean? And rightfully so. It pisses them off because they being like, our Earth heroes are so busy fighting each other that they can't see the forest for the trees. Like if they don't come out to fucking space and help fight this annihilation wave, they're all fucked. And so Richard Rider kind of has a little bit of a disdain for the Earth heroes after that. But this put Richard back on the top. This put Annihilus back on the top as well. At least for a short time he did anyway. In terms of like what movie you want to put Annihilus in, here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. He only works if they try to, in some way, shape, or form, adapt Annihilation. He's got to escape the negative zone. He's got to bring the annihilation wave with him. And he's got to use that control rod to wreak havoc. That's the only way that he's going to work. And this may sound somewhat blasphemous. I love James Gunn, but I'm glad he didn't use him. Because Annihilus would for sure have been a joke. I mean, 100% he would have been. And the crazy thing is, like with what James Gunn has used to adapt his movies, there's no way that Annihilation never slid across his desk. It for certain has, for sure. In terms of what movie you're using, man, you're gonna have to create. You're gonna have to just make an Annihilation movie. I mean, that's really the only way. And the problem is, the time to do an Annihilation movie, honestly, was post Endgame. And that was the time to do it. Xandar had been destroyed. The Nova Corps had been destroyed. The groundwork was already there. Thanos was out of the picture. No more Infinity Gems. The Avengers time traveling, anything could have caused a rift and some kind of weird, funky space-time continuum butthole or whatever that allows Annihilus to be free and he brings his annihilation wave with him. But he doesn't have to go to fucking Earth. And it doesn't have to be a Guardians movie. Or maybe you do want to call it Guardians 4, you know. But, you know, the thing of it is that Annihilus and Annihilation will live and die on who they want to use. And the problem is, the Annihilation story, it kind of needs, to a lesser degree, it needs Star-Lord. He does have scenes in it, but he really doesn't come into play until like Annihilation Conquest. Him and Rocket and Groot for that matter. But in terms of like Drax and not Nebula, Gamora. In terms of Drax and Gamora, though, they played pretty significant parts in the story, you know. But you can't use them for obvious reasons. So if they were to do an Annihilation movie, if I were them, they can still use the likes of Silver Surfer. They can use a Super Scroll. I mean, I don't know how you deem the scrolls at this point, but fuck it, find a way. Oh, and for fuck's sakes, don't use Emilia Clarke's Super Scroll. That shit was, oof. Anyway, but there are heroes you can use. I think what I would do is I would maybe reverse engineer it, right? At the end, spoiler alert, at the end of Annihilation, we get a new team formation called the Annihilators. And I would use them. That team consisted of Gladiator, Silver Surfer, Cosmo, the Russian space dog. Who else is in that? Obviously one of my fucking favorites, Betty Ray Bill, and Ronan the Accuser. You can't use Ronan, but I think he's the only one who they couldn't use. You know, so you can replace Ronan with someone else. You know, since he did. But I mean, they could reverse engineer it and do something like that. The thing of it is, though, is that it has to feel like a space epic. Annihilus is probably the most far-fetched of all the enemies that they could use. But honestly, I do think it could still work. And again, the Fantastic Four have their hands in so many different pots. They can use Annihilus as well. So I can also see him being in a Fantastic Four movie. The Annihilation Wave had to be much smaller. It had to be something that they themselves can deal with, but it can work. Check out the Annihilation book. It's really good. All right, and last but not least, I'm going to try to make this one somewhat quick so I can get out of here and go to bed because it is post-midnight. Court of Owls, specifically Lincoln March, a.k.a. Talon, a.k.a. Owlman, a.k.a. Billy Badass. He has a lot of names. I gave him that last one, though. So, Court of Owls, while they have been in a subpar video game, they haven't been in a live-action movie yet. And most people consider Court of Owls to be a modern-day classic. I consider it to be a modern-day classic. As a matter of fact, I'm very tempted to buy that story for literally the fourth time. They just released an absolute edition of Court of Owls, and I have been debating with myself as to whether or not I should spend the fucking $80 to buy a book that I already have 3 times. It sucks being a collector sometimes, guys. It really fucking does. But it looks so good. But Lincoln March is obviously the main antagonist of the Court of Owls story. I would say that the mystique and allure of the Court of Owls is really the main villain of the story, the main character of the story. But Lincoln March is the face. And spoiler alert, but you know, I reviewed this story in the podcast probably a year and a half ago. So go check it out, or, you know, read the story as well. But Lincoln March is a very, very interesting character, and I like the use that Scott Snyder uses when he made this character. Oh yeah, so this character was created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Lincoln March, the way he tells his story to Bruce Wayne, because in the beginning, you don't know that Lincoln March is this nefarious character. You may have an idea, but I don't know how many people knew exactly who this guy was. So you may have known that he was associated with the court, but you probably didn't know to what extent, right? So Lincoln March, if you listen to him tell this story, he will say that he was, orphaned also as a kid when his mom died in a car crash, and he was put through the through the orphanage system or whatnot, and worked his way up, grassroots guy. He's running for mayor. He supports Bruce Wayne and his, like Green Gotham initiative, and just a way to make Gotham a better place and whatnot. All these things that Bruce Wayne is trying to do, Lincoln March seems to be in support of. It is also very notable that Lincoln March is a very large and imposing man, also very charismatic as well, and very kind, it seems. Now, to Scott Snyder's to his defense, he does try to throw you off the trail of Lincoln March as far as who he really is, because in one of the first issues of Court of Owls, Bruce Wayne is attacked by a Talon. And it's like, well, if Lincoln March is a Talon, then like why not just kill Bruce Wayne right up there himself? Like they were in a spot that was somewhat secluded, and if Lincoln wanted to do it, he could have, but he didn't. But it was, obviously all a part of a huge ruse. And again, I'm not gonna talk about or dissect the Court of Owls. Again, I have all my own review on that. You guys can go check out. That was a whole lot of fun to do. I did it in preparation for that shitty game that came out, Gotham Knights, because that game tried to adapt the Court of Owls. But what I want to talk about here is Lincoln March. Lincoln March and every single one of his adaptations to me, I think is pretty fucking cool. In Court of Owls, it is cool to get the revelation that he may or may not be Bruce's brother, his older brother, which is executed way cooler than what it sounds like. You're my brother. It's not it's not so corny. Thank goodness. It was one of those cool things where it could be true or maybe it couldn't. And I don't know if Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo were trying to make like another kind of Joker-esque thing where maybe we do know Joker's origin, but we also really don't know his origin. I don't know if they were trying that with Lincoln March. The problem is that Lincoln hasn't really had the staying power, unfortunately. But he does exist in a couple of different continuities, and he's pretty cool all the way around, right? So with Lincoln March, he does have all the powers of the Talons, so he's very fucking hard to kill, extremely strong, fast, durable. You can have a hard fucking time dealing with any single Talon, any single member of the Court of Owls. It's going to be a long fucking day at the office, as Bruce Wayne can tell you. But he claims to be, the long lost brother of Bruce Wayne. And you know what? If I thought I was the long lost brother of Bruce Wayne, I would be tight too. I'd be mad as hell. Yeah. Because, okay, so I knew my parents longer than you did. All right. And I lose them. And I also lose my fucking multi-billion-dollar inheritance. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. But it's more than just that. Like for Lincoln, it really doesn't seem to be about the money or the inheritance. He's not so shallow, but he's broken because of it. And also because, becoming a Talon, I'm sure also has a way of making you mentally broken as well. So if they go to the Court of Owls route, there has to be a face of the Court of Owls. And man, that face would have to be Lincoln March. It would just have to be. Again, check out the Court of Owls story for that full breakdown. But here's the cool thing about Lincoln March. If you don't want to use him in the Court of Owls, that's unfortunate, but you have another option. Lincoln March, he claims that his real name isn't Lincoln March, but his real name is Thomas Wayne Jr. Thomas Wayne Jr. is also part of the, what are they, Earth 3? Earth 2? Are they Earth 3? Part of the Earth 3 supervillain team known as the Crime Syndicate. And the cool thing about the Crime Syndicate is like the attention to detail, right? So you got like Superwoman, who is, it's Diana Prince. It's Wonder Woman, but she's evil. You have Ultraman, who is Clark Kent, Superman, but evil. You have Green Lantern. You got the Grid, Cyborg. You have your members of the Justice League. They're just evil. But with Owlman, he is not Bruce Wayne. Owlman is Thomas Wayne Jr. Owlman is Lincoln March. They're the same person, just different universes. And that is if you believe that Lincoln March is telling the truth, that he is the first child of Thomas and Martha. If he is in fact telling the truth, then yeah, he's the same person as Owlman from Earth 3. So the Crime Syndicate will obviously be very cool to use, but I don't know if you want to use a mirror like that in a team up movie, but you can though. You can. But just going back to Lincoln March, earlier, I made reference that maybe you can't use Clayface in a sequel to the Batman because Clayface is a very like, in a sense, paranormal type of villain because he doesn't abide by the natural laws of reality, But Lincoln March could, and the Court of Owls could. They may have to pull a few shenanigans to get the talents to work properly. It all depends on how far down the rabbit hole they plan to go with the Batman sequel. I've heard rumors that maybe they will use the Court of Owls. And if they do, that'd be excellent. But to use them, you're going to have to use super strong, very fast zombies, in a sense, as your talents. But, that's something that they can either decide to nerf or not. What's really important here is Lincoln March. That character would have to be the face of the talents. He's going to have to be the head of that. And, it's one of those things where you're just going to have to get over the fact that everybody in the theater is going to know the twist. Because either A, everybody will have read the comic book, B, everybody will have friends who have read the comic book and they'll just ask them, or C, they'll just look it up. So you're going to have to get over the fact that everyone would know ahead of time that Lincoln March is the big bad. And I say that's okay. Fucking lean into that, Like, that doesn't have to be the end of the road. The twist isn't what matters, Not in this situation. What matters is the execution. So I think that having Lincoln March still be the face of that, still be the one who's running for mayor, have him want to make a change in Gotham. You're going to have to differentiate him from Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight, because Harvey Dent running for DA, wanting to make a change in Gotham. You guys see the parallels there. So there have to be some work done to make that different. But still, I think it's very doable. I think it makes a lot of sense. Court of Owls is just a phenomenal Batman story that people have been wanting in some way, shape, or form to have a live action appearance for some time now. And I think that the Batman would be a perfect sequel for that. So we'll see. Well, homies, this episode has been a little over 2 hours long. I've been talking to myself. My voice is a little hoarse now, and it's after midnight, and I gotta get up and go to work in the morning. God, you gotta just love all the pretty little nuances of life. Am I right? But that is my list of 8 characters that have not had appearances in live action movies, except for the ones that have. And again, I think to my knowledge, the only one that has actually appeared in a live action movie is Omega Red, and that's in a blink and you miss it cameo. No one remembers him in Deadpool 2. I think I'm good, you know. So yeah, guys, there will be a lot more fun episodes to come. Like I said, the Dune 2 review is coming up. I'm having the homie Brennan on to talk about Venom and all of his iterations, and talk about a little bit about Venom 3 and what we can expect from that. So I'm looking forward to that as well. There's a fucking laundry list of episodes I have written down here that will be reviewed throughout the year. So I'm not going to announce all of them yet because a lot of them require a lot more time and preparation on my part. But just know that they are coming and they will be on the way. So thank you guys again for listening again. Thank you guys again for being patient with me. Thank you guys again for sticking around. The Superhero Homies podcast has a full plate ahead of it. So hopefully you guys are down for the ride. And again, if you guys have any kind of questions, comments, skill, stress, food, supplies, then simply hit us up at superherohomies@gmail.com or any of our social media outlets. I am always active, live, and listening. You guys are the bomb diggity. But until then, I'm getting some sleep. And my name is Superhero Homie Q, signing off.